Hello and welcome to Scriptmate, the podcast for writers who dream of seeing their words spoken by paid actors on some sort of screen. I'm your host, Tim Schilberger, writer and founder of Write LA, a writing community and writing education and resources website. Joining me is the highly skilled and delightfully opinionated writer, Tony Giambuso. Hello, Tony.
Hello, Tim.
Welcome back.
Oh, it's good to be back.
We're back for a new season. Yes, we didn't go away. We just paused. We have new opinions and topics to discuss, but to kick off season 2, we're joined by a very special guest. A development executive who actually pays writers for drafts of scripts. You do, right?
Yeah, mostly.
Yeah. Felicity Staunton is the Executive Vice President of Development at Animal Logic Entertainment, the company behind the Peter Rabbit franchise and an upcoming slate of films for Sony, Paramount and Netflix. Felicity, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to be here, guys.
Our first question is, what does a development executive actually do?
It's a really great question. I feel like everybody wonders if we actually do anything.
Well, it's a nice, it's one of those titles where I'm in development. It's like, but what do you, I always assume it's like you have a shovel and you're digging for stuff. Like
I like that. I think the best way to put it is that we kind of do everything up until green light of a movie. So really the day-to-day is packaging. So it's finding, great concepts, great ideas, whether that's something that came to us from a writer or from a director or things that were just generated in the middle of the night because we thought we were geniuses. And we're like, this is definitely a movie, right?
Right.
And then, we bring all of the people together and typically we, generate a verbal pitch. And then from there, we hope the movie gets set up by a studio and we just keep trying to make it better before it comes to real film.
So you will take an idea to a studio and hope that the studio will fund you. So you'll find the project, you'll work with the writer, sorry, I know I'm veering off, but do you take an actual script or are you taking a concept most of the time to a studio?
Typically a concept. I mean, that isn't necessarily what everybody does when they're in dev. There's a lot of people that will take incoming material that's already fleshed out. Like you guys would have written a script and brought it in and someone says, great, let's go. I think because we're a little more niche, because we are in the family entertainment space, it's a very, very kind of like, narrow point to kind of hit. So a lot of the time we will kind of brainstorm, IP or we'll brainstorm genres or areas that we haven't developed in before and then start to build something out from there versus taking in a spec script.
Right.
I would imagine you have, your relationships that you've built up over the years with both writers, but also the studios and the places that are your buyers. How much of these, say you have that late night idea sesh, or you have your booklet of ideas that you're like, someday we want to do this. Is it, we're trying to hit these mandates, these studios, you have your people and you're talking to all the studios saying, this is what they're looking for. So this is what we're developing. And how much of it is, we have this thing that we think is great. We don't necessarily have a specific buyer for it, but it's so good. Like, what's the balance there?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Tony.
Oh, well done, Tony.
Yeah, that was really nice. And I think it's quite topical right now because I think in the past, at least for us, I think we were kind of chasing mandates a lot of the times. We were waiting to kind of discover, okay, what's working for the studios? What are they actually looking for? And I think the thing that has really kind of hit home for us as a company over the years is at the end of the day, if we don't really love it and it's not something that we're really passionate about, then it's probably not gonna make its way through, So I think it's like you're on a knife's edge all of the time. Like you're trying to satisfy what we think and what we hope the audience will want to see, and then also what the studios are actually buying. But on top of that, like I said, I feel like we're starting to get to a place where we're sort of honoring the things that we're excited by as well. And also, trying to be in a space where we're filmmaker and creator driven as well, because when you have that person behind it that's really passionate and really excited about what they're doing, then that's kind of where the magic is.
Do studio mandates vary wildly, do they? Or do they all kind of follow each other?
I mean, they can. It depends. Like the streamers are obviously often, very, very different to what theatrical studios are looking for. But, you tend to find that in this sort of family space that action comedies do incredibly well. They tend to be a bit more broad, very hyper commercial. And then, the streamers tend to be sometimes a little bit riskier in the type of content they would take on, or at least that was the case a few years ago. Nowadays, I don't know, you tell me. I wish I knew. I wish I knew like how to hit the spot all the time.
Well, I would imagine that if you're getting a mandate and it's something that you don't already have partially developed, and by the time you develop it, it's no longer a mandate anymore.
Well, that's exactly right. And, we have another company, Truant Pictures, that works in the sort of low budget genre space. And I feel like particularly for them, they're always trying to get ahead of what's cool. They're trying to find like the next thing. And I think, on the family side, we tend to be, a little bit more conservative just because of the sheer size of the films.
And the years it takes to get it from
the many, many years.
Yeah.
I mean, like I think the quickest one we ever did was Peter Rabbit, and that took about 4 years to go from development through and into production and to bring the movie out, which was just, as using one of your words, Tim, diabolically fast, and
so
they can take so much longer. I mean, we've got things that have been in development for 8 or 9 years.
So you could, because we're going to work, this is obviously a writing-based podcast, so we'll get into how your relationship with writers. But you could start working with a writer. Let's say they bring you something you like. You start to develop that with them. You can be on the road with them on this journey for at least 4 years and possibly as many as 8 to 10.
Yeah.
And so the writer doesn't get paid throughout that, do they?
Not necessarily. I mean, the hope is that we set it up quickly, and then you get into, the quote unquote development hell of studio development. I mean, the hope is that you can kick off a draft for them and get them paid. And then, those drafts churn over time alongside of visual development and, testing and those type of things.
Wow.
On projects that are going that long in that space, in that like family space, do you often have, are you bringing in newer writers, multiple writers, or are you sticking?
Especially bearded ones who are wearing blue sweatshirts. You're blushing.
Specifically bearded writers in these projects. Yeah. It depends. I think, typically they're getting a shot at multiple drafts. That's always the hope. Yeah. And again, when we're developing with someone right from the beginning, you want that there's a uniqueness of voice in that person that you want to maintain over the course of the development so you don't go completely off the rails. But yeah, absolutely. Sometimes, it gets to a point where maybe even they've just decided that I've gone as far as I can go with this idea, and then we'll bring in other writers.
All right. So let's get into the trenches writing-wise. So because part of the conversation I'd like to have is the whole general meeting thing as well. But first, if you're looking for a script or a project, is there anything that you're looking for in terms of the style of writing or the script itself, or how far along the process is? I mean, what intrigues you about an idea? What sparks for you?
About the idea specifically is uniqueness. Again, it's that fine line between things that feel commercial and feel like big ideas, but also have a point of difference. So I'm always looking for something that feels very voicey. I hate using that word because that sounds like shitty executive talk.
What's your definition? what would you say?
Well, if they're particularly kind of comedy forward, it's maybe something I haven't seen before, or it just feels like it's very specific. I mean, I think specificity is really one of the things that I'm always on the lookout for, particularly in their characters. Again, it's just something I haven't seen. I know it sounds really trite, but it is that thing where you're kind of when when you see it. And I think that when I finally do meet these writers after reading them, you can often tell that they've really poured themselves into the draft. The person that you get in front of you you can definitely feel the DNA that's kind of passed between them and their script.
And is it, is it in the, structurally speaking, do you look for voice in, because I obviously both of us read a lot of scripts from writers who haven't got a deal yet. And some of them will try to be really cutesy in the scene description. Some of them will try to break the fourth wall and be like, I know you're reading this, so, here's this. So they'll try to sort of draw attention to themselves and they think that's voice. And my advice has always been, that's not voice. That's you trying to be cute and attract attention, and anybody who's read a few scripts sees that, and it's please don't do that. So are there things you look for? I mean, is it that attract you, like the way they use scene description or the way they use dialogue or the way they build a character or just like anything that you can think of?
I'm always attracted to people that are, genuinely funny, and that don't take themselves too seriously, where there's like a sort of level of wit about what they do. But again, like I think it just comes down to them feeling like there's a sort of freshness. I think also, and maybe this is from a privileged position of like receiving a lot of scripts from reps that we trust and, like great relationships with, managers and agencies. But my assumption is always that structurally it's going to be sound. If I'm reading it from a place like that, they've probably got what it takes to write. And then it's really just about, finding a point of view that feels unique.
Yeah, I mean, that feels like everything right there. It also feels like, what do we need this podcast for? Right? It's like, because it's like you could do a collection of craft. You could get your dialogue. You could do this. But if there's not a point of view, if there's not something, and I think that actually speaks into why you should be, sharing your scripts among like your cohort, among your people, because like you can perfect, the craft on the page, I think a little bit, your structure, everything's hitting, everything's formatted. But do you have that thing? Do you have that X factor that just makes someone want to keep reading? And sometimes that just comes from sending it to people and letting people read it, so that by the time it lands on your desk, it is not just a collection of formatting or a collection of craft. It is like something that is greater than the sum of its parts.
And you sort of get a reputation, I think, because like I get excited now when I hear from, a writer that we've worked with in the past, or you find out what they're doing next. And like, you actually get excited because you're like, oh God, like I remember the last script I read of theirs, this one's going to be brilliant, And so you sort of like know what, I like when there's a writer that comes in and you kind of know what you're going to get. And then you can start to think about like, okay, what are the possibilities for them with the rest of our slate or with new ideas? And you start to, do that matrix and think about, okay, well, I have this new idea. This is going to be perfect for this person because of, this X factor that they have, or, this particular tone that they bring.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but I mean, think about it from a human nature point of view. It's way easier and all of us, when we're going to write a new project, we'll procrastinate. So we'll read a book on structure. We'll read a book on, we'll collect all this stuff. We'll go to a seminar. We'll do this, everything and it's way easier to sell. In order to write a successful script, you need to have this 7 beats on these pages. I mean, the more roadmappy you can do, not to offend roadmap, but the more like there is a path, the more a lot of people who haven't written scripts will be drawn to it, and the more money can be made by the people selling that stuff. Like the people who write books called The Audience and You.
Which I hear is like not a bad book.
No, it's not a bad book because there's no roadmap in it, because that's exactly what we're talking about. And what I talk to writers about is like, unless there's some sort of emotional authenticity in there, unless you're like really
that's
finding.
a nice way to say that.
Yeah.
I think you nailed it. That's much more eloquent than what I was circling around. But that's exactly what it is.
Well, yeah. Do you feel something when you read it? Whether it's laughter, and then the best is you're laughing, and then all of a sudden there's a gut punch, and you're just like, oh, and like you said, I want to see what this writer can do with that project that we can actually develop and get to a studio.
Yeah.
Their voice will translate really well to that.
Yeah, because and you get a sense of that they hit these spots or they're strong on particular writing. Yeah, see that? But again, it's not, because I read a lot of clone scripts where it's like, this is a generic version of an action adventure, and they've done a really good job of it. But I imagine if you saw that script, you have a bunch of writers could write a really good version of that. So why would you need?
Right. So what's that element of surprise that you're going to get from this specific person?
Right.
How are you going to kind of, give us something we didn't even expect?
Yeah. So I want to ask, when you're in that development process, you've been working with the writer, you've probably read this draft dozens of times. And so that emotional aspect is still there, but it's not, the jokes aren't surprising, and all of that. What is that moment? And I'm sure it's, bespoke to every project, but what is that moment when you say it is now ready to go to the studio or to the buyer? This is that you just, is it just that feeling, like you've been saying, like, I just feel like it's there? Is there debate among the team? Like what?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've got to trust that. I mean, if you're talking specifically about like, taking a pitch in, which is typically the way we do it, is we'll, work for a couple of months on a verbal pitch, and then take that in. And I think once you feel really confident that you're in good hands, and once you're no longer on those pins and needles, like worrying that someone's gonna like, flop something up or it doesn't feel natural or whatever it may be. But your point about getting of hearing it so many times that you're like, I don't even know if this is funny anymore. Sometimes that's the point where you have to let it go while it still feels fresh, before it starts to feel like it's over rehearsed or you've noted the thing to death to the point where it's lost all of its sparkle. So you have to keep reminding yourself about how you felt about it the first time.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good segue, because there are two things that where you intersect with writers. Is one is the general meeting, and the other is the pitch.
Yeah.
So let's talk about those first. So the general meeting. Let's say Tony is a writer that you would have read one script of his possibly, and then you'll have a general meeting, and a general meeting is defined as just a meet and greet, right?
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, I think like if you're coming into a production company like us versus going and seeing a studio about a specific project, I'm really just looking to get to know you and see whether we could actually work together for many, many years potentially, So, I'm looking to know like what's your point of view and like, how do you present as well? So like I can feel confident that when we take you into the room that it's gonna have a good
You mean
vibe.
even down to what they're wearing, like how they show up?
Not necessarily. Like no. Just more like, is there a sort of level of confidence, And I will say like that stuff can be built over time as well. But if there's a spark, I mean, it's kind of like speed dating, right? It's just like if there's a little bit of something there, then maybe we can work together for an extended period of time.
Are there some, green flags and red flags that you're looking at? Like a writer sitting down, they start going down a path and you're like, oh, you perk up, and then they start going down a path and you're like, all right, what time is it?
Well, I mean, I think this is more back to like, getting people prepared to go into that kind of meeting is like always assume that it's going to be like 30 minutes. Again, we tend on the production company side, we tend to have a little bit more time where the studios like are really stacking their meetings. But assume you're going to get a really kind of short window in which to present yourself. Unless the meeting was set up specifically for you to pitch something, don't do that. So
don't pitch.
I wouldn't. I mean, unless someone asks you, what are you working on? Tell me about it. Be ready to give them like the log line and a really kind of quick, snappy kind of snapshot of what it is that you have coming up. And then, maybe suggest that you do a follow-up if it's something that sparks for them or that they're interested in. Because there's nothing worse than coming, like if you're particularly on the clock, and shit, we need to get out of here soon, and somebody's halfway through an impromptu 20-minute, verbal pitch on something, and then you have to tell them, sorry, we've got a heart out and we have to go. There's nothing worse than that. It's awkward for everybody. So, keep it short, keep it snappy. If they have extra time and they can keep going and you want to chat and shoot the shit, great. That's wonderful. That means it's probably gone well.
So, but otherwise, so you're not, so because I know a lot of people will tell you with a general meeting, have a bunch in your back pocket and you're going there to kind of sell a particular project, but you're not. You're going to sell yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, a lot of the time when I'm doing it, I'm looking for, like I might have an open writer assignment, right? So I have something to pitch them and say like, this is a piece of IP or an idea that I want to talk to you about. And if it's very specific like that, then great. Like usually like that's what I want to get into. I want to hear, I want to hear your thoughts and like how you can kind of, tap dance that out with me and kind of brainstorm as well what it could be, because that's going to give me a really good idea of, is this going to be the right fit? But generally, if you're in there for actually like for a strict general, then like I said, be ready with some quick one-liners about what your projects are to give a sense of you, and then, get through it.
Just chat.
Yeah.
I like the speed dating analogy because my approach is always the long game is to say, let's create a connection in these 30 minutes or so. If I'm, like you said, if I'm asked to pitch on something, or if you say, we read your script, we have this piece of IP or we have this idea. Do you have a take on that? And then I can, pivot and go into that.
You don't just say, nah.
Next.
Nah. That sounds stupid.
But
that's important too, because if you really hate something, don't do it.
Well, don't waste 7 minutes of your precious time to say, I don't feel like I have a take on that, but I'd love to tell you about whatever.
Exactly.
And the long game of it could be, with some polite following up, it could be 6 months where you're sitting there, you get your mandate, you get a piece of it, and you go, oh, Tim had that. He's told us about that idea, or Tim might be perfect for this, but maybe at the time he wasn't, or you were too busy or whatever. Always. And so instead of saying, I feel like the instinct is like, I have 30 minutes to get a job. And I feel like if you think about that like a date, you're like, I have 30 minutes to get a girlfriend. And you're like, whoa.
Right. No. We don't need to get married yet. No, that's exactly right. I think that's so spot on. It's just, this is the start of hopefully a beautiful relationship, and there's going to be many more of these to come, with this company or this person.
So it's make eye contact, be pleasant, talk about yourself in an open, vulnerable way, have some, wit about you.
And have some ideas. You want it to feel like a back and forth, not like we're, trying to interview you,
Yeah.
Right.
Like this, really stressful.
Yeah.
And listen, right? Listen, like all the other things.
What?
Yes. Right, because they're going to tell you oftentimes what they're looking for, or you're going to glean some things about what, even just the individual development exec that is saying, like, what's your taste? You might not even be at this company in 2 years, not you specifically, but the person.
At this point, who knows?
And so you might go off, start your own thing. This person might be on the lower level of the ladder, and then they might get promoted within a year. They're now running the place. And so they had no power to get your idea through a year ago, but now because you've been following up, because you've been listening about their taste, you now have created this relationship like you would with anybody.
So you want to build a bridge, not burn it.
Yes.
I mean, in general, you start burning
that's
bridges.
pretty much life.
Don't burn it down.
But then also we struck on, and I know we want to get to pitching in a second, but also the not being afraid to say no is an interesting one, because sometimes writers, I know I fell into that trap where it's like, I will have a meeting and I'll say, I'll write anything you want. I'll do anything. Just give me work. I'm good. I'm a good writer. I'll do it all. And then they walk out of the meeting, they're like, I don't know what to do with that person. I don't know what their skill set or their strength is. And they sound kind of desperate. So, but then the reverse, I suppose the flip side of that is you don't want to get to, I only do sci-fi set in the year 2736. And if it's not, then goodbye.
Yeah.
So you just have to sort of find, is that what, that's what we're saying, right? Don't be too desperate, but also don't be too closed off.
Absolutely. Be open. You're there, you're going to be in that meeting for a reason, one way or another, whether it's about a specific project or because they liked your writing, or they liked who you were. So, be open. Who knows what will come out of it.
All right.
But I would also feel like if you're saying, if I was saying, like, I could totally write that political thriller, which I cannot. And then I go off and now I'm pitching. It's like, well, I've just wasted this opportunity because I'm going to send them something that's probably not going to be good.
Yeah.
And so their only version of me is going to be a subpar, as opposed to me just saying, that's actually not my strong suit.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I could write the rom-com version of the political rom-com, and maybe I do that. And if that's,
Yeah. It's a political thriller with romance.
Yeah.
So pitching. Writers at the lower level or the entry level often think that getting in the system means their script gets picked up and then all they get to do is just write scripts and the phone rings or the emails come in from studios saying, can you please write a draft of the next Marvel movie? But pitching is a crucial part of writing that I think sometimes gets a little bit undersold and sometimes writers aren't so good at it.
Yeah.
What is your experience with pitching and how do you encourage writers? What do you say?
Well, I think firstly, it's a little unfair, I think, to expect. It just is the way that it is. But, not all writers are great pitchers, right? Some of them are fantastic writers and they just don't love being on display, and they're just not naturally inclined to that type of thing. It's unfortunate and I feel for that because it's a bummer, but unfortunately it is part of the process, and there is an expectation these days that, you be a great writer, but you also be a great salesman as well, or a saleswoman. So, let's put that aside for a second and assume that you can kind of get there. And to that point too is trust your executive, because they really want you to be good and they really want to help you. And you can get better at at pitching, right? It's not something that you're either good or bad at. Like it can be trained into you, and you can get that down.
Just to backtrack for a second, for those who haven't been in a pitch, are we talking about walking around the room doing a little bit of a presentation? Are we talking about slides or a PowerPoint, or are we just talking about, let me tell you about my movie?
Right. Like the good old days, we would have gone on our roadshow. We would have backed up all of our meetings over a week, and we would have been in person. We don't really do that anymore. It's typically over Zoom.
Over Zoom, yeah.
These days, even if people are in the same city, it's nice to do it in person. But there is a level also of comfort, I think, for a writer that maybe isn't super comfortable just doing it off the top of their head in a room. You can kind of fashion yourself, like your screen and your notes, and you're going to have your exec or their assistant or whoever it is running, if you have a visual presentation, someone's going to do that for you. So there is a level of comfort of doing it over Zoom these days. But I think one of the big things about pitching is I think everyone gets really hung up on story and plot, and thinking I need to get my entire story out in 20 or 25 minutes. And you really don't. I think the real thing that we're trying to sell is thematic and tone and character and emotion, And so, when you think about that from the point of view of having 20 minutes, that makes it a lot easier. People, as soon as you start to get too deep into plot and story, everybody tunes out. We always make the joke, but the attention span of an executive is pretty short, and I say that as one. So, so it's it is really easy in those situations to kind of be fuck, I don't remember where we're at in this story. So, keeping things concise as possible, and and focusing on what are the themes that we're wanting to draw out of that? How does that relate to the characters that you're building and the world that you're building? And also, if you're pitching a comedy, your pitch should be funny. Yep. It's not enough just to say that this is going to be full of really funny set pieces and it's going to be great. It's exemplify that, give us examples of what that is. Or if it's really emotional, and, give us little snapshots of that emotional dialogue from your characters,
Are you encouraging, I imagine that this is just happening naturally during the development process, but the writer bringing in sort of their personal angle or talking about themselves or their backstory and how it relates somehow to this, not necessarily
my family was murdered. Here's a comedy.
Exactly that. It doesn't have to be that, but there's just why me? Why this person? Other than the fact that I'm good at it.
Yes, absolutely. And I kind of encourage when we are building our pitches that's kind of the place that we start, and you'll find that in that brainstorming that we'll all find our personal way in. So even, from the producer point of view or the executive point of view, and the writer, if we have a director as well, that everyone can kind of feed into that part of the narrative too, around why us, and there's always a way to do that, even if it feels, maybe that's not where it started, but as you develop, I'm sure you're going to find, these kind of personal connections. And then that's the most resonant part. A lot of the time when I hear a pitch, that's the thing I'll remember is why that person told me that story. They'll say it was something that happened in my past, or it's really meaningful to me because I just had a kid, and and this really great and funny thing always happens with my child, and it inspired me to do this. And that's the piece often that I take away and remember.
We Tim and I had I'm bringing you into this. I always bring up the lab that we were in where we would read pages out loud, and then they would say, the instructor would say, what is the story about? And I'd say, it's a rom-com set in a restaurant. Oh, yeah. And then he'd go, cool. But what is it about?
What's it actually about?
And not that you want to always start a meeting with, 1,000 themes and no plot or character, but there is something that deeper level of a thing that you're bringing to it as to I think the question that has plagued writers other than what is voice is the why today, or why now? And it's I don't know, because I have the idea
today.
But I think because this means a lot to me now, that's why now. And because it means a lot to me, it might mean a lot to other people. And here's how I can draw that bridge that gap between me and you emotionally, which also happens to be the theme of your book.
Yes. I should have brought it, had it sitting here.
I didn't mean to segue into your book, but it's very
explain.
It's accurate. Yeah, it's like, how can we bridge that gap emotionally? It's like you said at the beginning, Felicity, you read something and you're like, oh, I feel something. I'm presuming that the writer also feels this thing, and I feel now connected to them, and now I want to meet them.
You would be shocked at the amount of meetings I have with writers and the amount of feedback I write where it's like, I don't think you've thought through why you're writing this, right, and why you're writing it now, and why it's speaking to you, because you could have 30 other ideas and you're like, no, none of those are really speaking to me. This one is. And I keep saying, if you haven't thought about why this one is speaking to you right now, there's unlikely you're going to infuse your script with that emotional authenticity, because you don't know why you're writing it. And if you don't know, what are we getting from it? So yeah, it's absolutely.
No, I really like your point too, Tony, about
just don't like it more than mine. Just don't like this one.
Too late.
You don't have a beard.
Damn it.
Great head of hair, but no beard.
Yeah, it's too high.
Was that if it resonates with you, then it's probably resonating with other people, in that moment, and that creates, its own sort of relevance. And I think it's important to kind of lean into that.
Right. But also, just to be clear, we're not talking about plot, because a lot of people are like, this is a really cool idea from history, or a really cool story, or a really cool person. It resonates with me, so it's going to resonate with other people. We're not saying plot, we're saying feelings.
Well, that plot
emotion.
resonates with you for another reason.
Yeah.
It's not just because it's cool. It's like there's a and if you can mine that, then that's the thing that's gonna. Because there's definitely been scripts I've read that I'm like, why do I care about Isaac Newton? And then all of a sudden you're reading it and you're like, I care a lot about that.
And you're like, wow, this is like incredibly relevant right now.
We've run out of time, so. Because you're delightful, and we should get you back. But just a quick one on feedback, because that is another bugbear for writers is receiving feedback. Firstly, how important, how much feedback is a writer going to be looking forward to as they go through the development process?
Probably a lot.
Right.
Yeah. Probably
so what they bring in may not be what it ends up.
No. And look, I think the one thing I'll say about feedback is, for both sides, is to be open and be ready to, again, it's tap dance on the spot, right? Be ready to kind of brainstorm. It's like, take it as an opportunity. And the same goes for us as well. I mean, just because we say to you, we always say, okay, we're going to give you the bad idea here. But, but we truly don't expect you to take what we said verbatim and just do that thing, right? If we give you a shitty pitch, which we may well do, try and get underneath it and try and discover, like, what is it they're actually trying to say. And this goes for when we get studio notes and, notes from partners as well. But I think the best results are always when we can kind of talk it through and try and like work out a solution together. I mean, that's the fun of the development process. That's why we're like, this is fun. We're like in a room together and we're just like kind of talking it out. And it's not you. It's like we're literally talking about the note. So don't personalize too much, and we love it when you guys come back to us as well with a version that solves the problem but is completely you and completely fresh and unexpected. Don't just do the thing that we told you to do, because it's usually the bad, like literally the bad
there's like
version.
A note behind the note. There's something itch you're trying to scratch that you're like, my job is to figure out what isn't working, and then your job as the writer is to make me excited about the solution.
Because you're going to give us a much better version than we could have. That's why you guys are the writers.
Right. But don't walk in thinking you're not going to get feedback and that your project, because there'll be some writers at the early stages who will be like, no, this is perfect.
Yeah.
So be aware that.
And just be open to it. I think if everybody closes down and climbs up around it, it's not a good environment. It's not that you can't push back. Like if there really is something that you're just like, God, I hate this, or it's completely, taking us off the rails, then talk it through. That's
well. I feel like I've been in that situation where I don't understand the note, and I think the worst thing you can do is try to apply a note that you're just kind of guessing.
Yeah.
And so I've been in that meeting where it's like literally 45 minutes later, and I go, "Oh, that's why you want me to do that." And they're like, but they weren't really saying it the way that. And then I finally understood it, and then it was a great note after all. But I pushed back.
Don't tell them that,
but respectfully.
Yeah, you suck. Okay, thank you very much for coming in. Do you have any other final advice for writers who want to work with you and develop projects and go and make movies?
I think just generally the industry's really hard right now, and just keep going. It's a real art form, and it's really for us, it's the most important piece of the puzzle. We can't do what we do without you guys. And find your tribe, find an alliance, find the people around you that are going to keep supporting you and kind of get us through this moment, because it's not going to last forever. And everyone's still making movies. There's still movies out there, still billboards right out on the street right now. It's just a matter of recalibration, and there is a future. So keep writing.
Keep writing.
Amazing.
And keep working on being pleasant in meeting strangers and being out there. And
or just be super weird in the meeting, and then we'll be like, God, they were really weird and awesome. So it's fine.
So be emotionally authentic.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
There it is. We don't have time for any of our other crap, so we'll just say goodbye.
Yeah, sounds good. Nobody needs that crap anyway.
Felicity Staunton from Animal Logic. Thank you, Animal Logic Entertainment. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
This was a delight.
We
Thanks,
appreciate
guys.
you.
We'll do this again.
Absolutely. Scriptmate is brought to you by Write LA, a screenwriting. I have to read this stuff now. A screenwriting community. Visit our website to get more tips and helpful information, read articles, watch videos, and book a feedback session with me if you'd like some help with your latest draft or just want to talk about an idea that's rattling around in your head. Go to write-la.com for the details. Our theme music was written and performed by the Australian band The Swarm. Big thanks to them. By the way, Felicity's Australian. I don't know if you picked that up.
Can you hear it?
Are you asking me specifically?
Yeah, you got that. Okay.
Yeah, I think you got it. Yeah.
Thanks. And our beautiful graphic was designed by my very talented daughter, Claire Schulberger. Thanks for listening. We are grateful. If you have a question you want answered, email me at tim@write-la.com. We'll be back soon, but for now, say goodbye, Tony.
Goodbye.